Welcome to Lecture 7. We're moving into expression of ideas, specifically transitions. These questions test logical connection between your sentences. Now, transition questions appear in maybe the second portion of your LCAT. They're predictable, and you need to understand what each transition word means in order to get the answer right. So, today we're going to go and look over certain types of transition words and their meanings and the choice of how to make and the idea of how to make the choice for transition words. Similarly, we're going to look for some question types as well that you can expect to get on your paper. So now let's connect ideas logically. Number one, firstly, we're going to look at the 6 main types of transition sentences. So here, the first one is continuation or addition. This is when ideas go in the same direction. By same direction, I mean that the ideas reinforce each other. So it is a continuation or an addition sign, right? So for these, the examples that you can look for when connecting ideas in a manner that they are adding onto each other or continuing the previous thought. So we're going to be examples like additionally, furthermore, moreover, also, in addition to, besides, likewise, similarly. So these are the kinds of words that would insinuate the idea of addition in a sentence. Next one is going to be contrast or opposition. So by contrast or opposition, I mean when the ideas oppose each other. So there are certain two sentences on your LCAT and they're being connected by a transition word. So when these ideas oppose each other, when the idea of this sentence opposes the another sentence, so you're going to use the transition of opposition. So in the transition of opposition, very common ones are however, nevertheless, nonetheless, on the other hand, in contrast, conversely, despite, yet, still. So these are very common on the LCAT or be it on the digital SAT. So it is fairly common to see these words being used as expressing the ideas of opposition or contrast. The next one is cause and effect. Now, cause and effect means if this sentence is a result of the previous sentence or if this sentence is the result of the previous one. So there is a relation of being a result of something right here. So there's a cause and effect relation in between your sentences. So for this, the certain transition words are therefore, thus, consequently, here, hence, as a result, accordingly, thus. Now, you can say that maybe it is that because of what I said earlier, this happened. So here, this transition word that connecting these two sentences is going to show cause and effect relations. Further could be like, for example, for this reason, consequently, therefore, thus, resultantly. So these are some words that suggest cause and effect relation. So now the next one is going to be examples, words that show examples or words that are used for exemplifying certain things. Now, these could be words like, for example, for instance, in particular, to illustrate, namely, specifically. So these are the ones that show, these are the transitions of example. Now, you can understand this by saying that maybe this previous sentence the other sentence is talking to the previous sentence by saying it that let me give you a specific case for this, right? So this is one sentence and the other sentence is a specific case for this or a specific example for this, right? So we're going to use words like for example, for instance, in particular, to illustrate, namely, etc. in between your sentences. The next one is emphasis and clarification. So by emphasis, I mean certain words that emphasize your ideas when they are stressing a point that you're trying to make in your sentence. So these are words like indeed, in fact, certainly, that is, in other words, clearly, or obviously, certainly. So these are the transition words that would emphasize a certain point in the given sentence. Now, here you could think maybe this sentence has a relation of clearing or making the ideas in this one stronger. Like you're going to express one idea over here and it is joined by a transition word, and this idea is being reinforced in this sentence. So it is emphasizing on this idea, it is clarifying on that idea. So the very last type of transition word that you can encounter in your paper is going to be time and sequence transitions. So now these transitions show the order of events. By order of events, I mean that in a given passage, you might be given maybe two to you might be given 5 to 6 lines of a passage, and there, if you follow the transition of time and sequence, you'll be able to understand where is the passage taking you, right? So examples for this would be first, like firstly they would say, secondly, finally, thus, next, subsequently, again, meanwhile, afterward, previously. So these are the ones that you can use for showing the relation of a hierarchy or building your ideas, a flow in your ideas, right? So, for example, they would say this is the previous sentence, this is the transition which is connecting it, and this is another sentence. Now, this says that this is what is happening after this, right? Or you can say this thing happened, then this thing happened. Now here, then shows time or sequence, or re- here, then shows time or sequence relation in between your sentences. So now, for now that we've looked at the types of transitions that we can predict to encounter on the LCAT, so now let's go towards how we're going to strategize and solve for the correct answer. So the steps that I would recommend for the transitions questions is are as follows. So the first one is read the sentence before the blank. Now this is something that you can always do when you have a blank in your question, right? So you're going to read the sentence before the blank. You're going to read the sentence with and after the blank. Now here, by with and after, I mean that in your sentence you are going to read this transition word and whatever is the sentence after, right? But there is a certain tip that a lot of people follow, is that you do not read the transition word, you just completely eliminate it from your mind and you're going to skip it and read the two connecting sentences, right? Because in this way, this is not going to blur your idea. Okay, so you're going to read these two sentences and you're going to determine the relationship in between these sentences. Now, these are some relationships that we've also talked about in the transition examples one. So they're going to be, if the sentences are in the same direction, then it means that they are adding onto each other. So we're going to use transition words for addition. Then if they are in the opposite direction, if one sentence is talking about something else and the another one is completely opposite of that, so you're going to use transition words for contrast. And similarly, if the second sentence or first sentence is a result of another one, so you're going to use cause and effect relations. And example, if those sentences are maybe one of them is example of the another, so we're going to use example transitions. And similarly, for showing the timeline in your given sentence, you're going to use a time transition. So let's go to an example. The Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented economic growth to Britain. This prosperity came at significant cost to workers' health and safety. Now, over here, we see that it says unprecedented economic challenges, and it shows a significant cost to workers' health. So, let's go through step by step. First, we're going to read the sentence before it. The Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented economic growth to Britain. Now, we're going to read after the blank. This prosperity came at a significant cost. We can see that significant economic growth suggests positive, right? However, the other one shows that it brought a significant cost to workers' health, but it is negative. So we identify the relation of from positive to negative, right? So it is going to be a transition word for contrast, because sentences are not in the same direction. So let's look for a transition of contrast in our choices. So the first one is therefore, which is again a transition for result, right? Additionally is transition for addition. Similarly, okay, for example is again transition for addition. It could be for that, or it could be for showing examples, right? So the only transition word that is suggesting a contrast is however. The Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented economic growth to Britain. However, this prosperity came at significant cost to workers' health and safety. Now we have correctly chosen our answer. Okay, let's go for the other question, which says the research showed that exercise improves memory. It was found to reduce stress and anxiety. Okay, now here you see that exercise improves memory. It is talking about a benefit, right? It's talking about a positive thing about exercise. Second sentence is talking about it reducing anxiety and stress. So this is again a positive thing about exercise, right? So we're talking about a benefit, and then we're going back again to a benefit. So it is a transition of addition, because they're going in the same direction, right? The first one is also positive and the second one is again positive. So we're going to use transition of addition to connect these sentences. Here, let's eliminate our answer choices that are irrelevant in this matter. So however is again transition of contrast, therefore is transition of result, additionally is transition for adding onto something, and for instance transition for example. Now a lot of people might confuse this with being the transition of maybe using for instance here, because both of them are talking about some kind of way that exercise is helpful, right? However, you're going to use additionally here, because the word additionally is clearly talking about exercise first improving memory, and other than that it also reduces stress and anxiety. So this is an addition to the previous idea, right? So let's go for example number 3. The new policy increased workplace productivity by 20%. Employee satisfaction scores also rose significantly. Danish management decided to implement the policy countrywide. Now, you can identify what the relation in between your sentences are. First, let's read is again the sentence before the transition. So, productivity is increasing by 20%, and employee satisfaction scores are also increasing significantly, right? So, both of them are talking about a positive change or positive thing that's happening, right? And after your transition word, you're going to read the sentence. It is that the management decided to implement the policy countrywide. Now, they decided to expand the policy, right? As a result of what they saw was changing. So there's a positive change, and as a result of that, they decided on a certain thing. So now here you see that it is going to be a transition for result, or the one that's used for cause and effect. So in our given sentences, let's eliminate the answer choices that do not meet these conditions. Again, however, is talking about a contrast between sentences, so we're not going to use that. Similarly, for example, is also something that is used for exemplifying something. So here we're not talking about an example, rather we are showing the relation of cause and effect. So we're going to eliminate that as well. So and meanwhile is again like however or in addition, it can be used in both cases. So meanwhile again is not talking about a result here. So we're going to eliminate this as well. And the only answer choice that we're left with is going to be therefore. So let's read this again. The new policy increased worker productivity by 20%. Employee satisfaction scores also rose significantly. Therefore, management decided to implement the policy countrywide. So here, therefore, is your correct word. Now, a common trap that a lot of people encounter in the while attending the paper is going to be that if two transition words have exactly the same meaning, right? They have similar meanings in if two of the answer choices have exactly similar meaning. Now, I'm going to give you an example. Now, this answer choice one is maybe however. Second one is going to be but. Now, however and but also both are expressing the idea of contrast, right? So they have the exact same meaning. For this, you can directly know that there can't be two correct answers, so eliminate both, right? This is a very crucial thing that you can do while you're attempting the transition questions. Is going to give you certain clarity on your answer choices and going to eliminate a lot of your answer choices, because there are certain questions in which both there are transition two on answers that are actually similar, so you can just eliminate both of them, get rid of your two and eliminate your answers. Okay, so now that we're done with transition words, let's look at rhetorical synthesis, which is again a very important part of your LCAT. So, rhetorical synthesis means these are going to be questions that would ask you to combine information from different sources or complete the text most logically based on certain notes or data that's going to be provided to you. So these are called rhetorical synthesis questions. Now, before going through the idea and how to approach this, I figured we could firstly look at an example. So this is an example here. Let's read this and tackle this question. So, while researching a topic, a student has taken the following notes. Marie Curie was born in Warsaw, Poland, 1867. She moved to Paris to study physics and mathematics. In 1903, she won the Nobel Prize in Physics. In 1911, she won the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. She was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. She remains the only person to win Nobel Prizes in two different sciences. Now, this is a fairly, like I would say, smaller or going to be easier passage. You can get maybe huge paragraphs in these, so be aware of that. But this is like a simple one. And now the question asks us, the student wants to emphasize how unique Curie's achievement was. So I'm going to just highlight this, how unique Curie's achievements were. So which choice most effectively uses the relevant information for the notes to accomplish its goal? Now, you can see that in these question types, you're going to connect A ideas, and you're going to select those that answer choice that fulfills your a certain goal in question, right? So here we want to show how unique QE's achievements are. So let's go through our answer choices and eliminate the irrelevant ones. Okay, so the first one is Marie Curie, born in Warsaw in 1867, moved to Paris to study physics and mathematics. Curie won Nobel Prizes in both physics and chemistry. Curie remains the only person to have won Nobel Prizes, and Curie was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, and she won that in physics. Now, we want to emphasize how unique the achievement was. So, the first one is talking about her birth and about her information of like maybe studying physics and mathematics, which isn't unique, right? It isn't showing uniqueness. So we're going to eliminate this answer based on that. Okay, so we're going to eliminate this answer. The next one is listing the two prices. Now a lot of students would be tempted to choose this one, because this again is a unique thing to get a Nobel Prize. However, this is just listing the two prizes, and it isn't emphasizing the uniqueness, right? So we're going to eliminate this one as well. Then next one is that Marie Curie remains the only person. Now the word only person over here clearly shows that it is talking about how unique she was in this regard. So this is our correct answer, right? So this is my correct answer. And lastly, Marie Curie was the first woman to win a Nobel Prize. Now you would think that maybe first woman right here would suggest uniqueness, which indeed it is unique, but it is less unique than being the only person in science to win Nobel Prize, right? Only person to win Nobel Prize in two different sciences. So this is less unique than that. So the one answer choice that is accomplishing this goal is going to be answer C. Okay. So now that we've looked at the example question, now let's go through the steps that you can follow in your rhetorical synthesis. The first one is going to be read the goal fully. Okay, you're going to understand what the student wants to emphasize, right? You're going to understand the purpose of the notes, because it's going to clearly state that. As we can see in this example, it clearly says that the student wants to emphasize the uniqueness. So you would be given certain clues or certain notes on which ideas to actually look for, right? So you're going to read the goal fully. Next is going to be checking the options which are relevant, right? Checking the notes which are relevant. Now, there are certain notes which would be irrelevant in this case. For example, you saw that this was very irrelevant because she moved to study. she moved to Paris and studied mathematics. And this is again very irrelevant to the fact that she was a unique person in science. So we are going to not look for that, and we're going to look for the answer choices that are actually relevant or suggesting this idea. And next, we're going to eliminate options that are irrelevant. Again, eliminate the irrelevant ones that do not accomplish the goal. Now, the goal could be maybe talking about Mary Curie's uniqueness, but one of the answer choices is talking about the fact that she has won these prizes and it's talking about achievements, right? Now, we're talking about achievements is not the same as talking about uniqueness. So, you're going to eliminate this answer choice as well. And if the answer choices are too general or too specific, now by too general, I mean that it's just generally talking about Marie Curie as a person, whereas you're talking about maybe her education, right? So it's talking about Marie Curie as a person, you're talking about her education. Now, this is a specific thing, and your answer choice is that it's given to you is very general. So we're going to eliminate that answer. Similarly, if it is too specific, now there could be maybe some things that are not mentioned even in the notes, right? Beyond the given passage and beyond the notes. So we're not going to choose that answer as well. So the last one is just again choose the best option based on your conclusion. Now let's do another example. The following are students' notes. Online education enrollment increased 35% from 2020 to 2023. Students cited flexibility as the primary benefit. Completion rates for online courses remain lower than in person courses. Universities are investing in better online platforms. Now, the question asks select the answer that presents a balanced view of online education's worth. Let's go through each of the answer choices. Again, the goal is to present a balanced view of online education, right? So it is something that shows how it is growing, like talking about its growth and about the benefits that maybe we're getting from it. So the first the choice first one says online education gives view 35%, though competition rates lag behind in-person courses. Similarly, students prefer online education for its flexibility. Universities are investing in online platforms. Online education increased from 35% from 2020 to that. Now, the first option is including both the fact that it is growing and also showing that it is lagging behind in-person courses. So it's talking about something that's positive and again talking about something that's negative. So it is presenting a balanced view. So this we're going to keep this answer for now. The next one is talking about how students prefer online education for its flexibility. Now this is only a positive thing about the online education, whereas our goal is to present a balanced view. By balanced view, which means that you're going to present positive and negative ideas. So we're going to eliminate this answer based on that. Universities are investing in online platforms. This is only about some investment and it isn't insinuating a positive or negative connotation. So we're going to eliminate this idea as well. And lastly, only growth has been discussed over here. So only a positive thing has been discussed, whereas a negative thing is not negative things are mentioned. So we're going to eliminate this answer choice as well. And again, the first answer choice, option A, is the correct one, which talked about the fact that it grew and also about the fact that it is lagging behind, of course. So it's a negative thing. Now, remember this checklist when remember the checklist that I gave you about transition words and about your rhetorical sentences questions. That is going to help you a lot when you will be encountering these questions on your paper. So I'm going to briefly list them down here as well. Now, this checklist would include that you're going to read both sentences before and after the transition word, and you're going to identify the relationship between these transition words and eliminate those relations which actually are not, eliminate those answer choices which are not in that along the same lines. So you're going to eliminate those and check if the transition fits logically. You need to read the sentence with your transition word, and finally make your choice. So these are some mistakes that I would emphasize on avoiding in while attempting your paper. The first one is going to be some mistakes on transition word errors. So these are maybe choices based on sounds. Now you might think that this a certain word sounds very sophisticated, so I'm going to use that. That shouldn't be your aim. Next is not reading both sentences. Now you might be tempted because of maybe lesser time. You're not going to read all of the two sentences. Without reading the sentences, you won't be able to identify the relationship, right? So if you don't read the sentences, you're not going to pick your correct answer. So I'm going to just do not do this. And ignoring specific relationship again. Now there are two sentences and you have to connect it with a transition word. You now might think that maybe I can just use any transition word here, whereas you are supposed to connect these sentences identifying the relationship as well, right? And not eliminating similar transition words from the choice. This was something that I talked about as a trap. So if you eliminate similar transition words, it's going to make it a lot easier for you to like make choices. So similarly, for rhetorical synthesis questions, certain things that you can avoid is misinterpreting the code and actually not reading the code, because it is clearly stated in your question that the author is trying to achieve this very goal. Now, if you are not interpreting this correctly, or if you are just ignoring that goal completely, so it's going to make it very hard for you to actually choose the correct answer. So understand the goal and select your answer based on that. You're going to delete the irrelevant notes, eliminate them from your answers, and choose something that is a very big mistake is to choose general over specific. You should rather do the opposite. If in your answer choices both uh, answer choices are expressing maybe the idea of uniqueness. However, the first one, as we saw in the question for Marie Curie one, let me go back. Now, this one is also talking about the fact that it's unique, right? However, this one is talking more emphasizing on the uniqueness than this one. So, both these answer choices are actually correct. However, the last one is a bit too general, where the first one, the correct option is kind of specific. So you are going to choose this one, the specific one, over the general one. And there could be certain answers that do not meet the tone, that are incorrect in tone. So you can eliminate that right off the bat as well. And um, you should use elimination for these questions. Again, I would just again list down some transition words. If your sentences are in the same direction, you're going to use additionally, furthermore, moreover, similarly, along the line, transition words like this. And opposite, if they are in the opposite direction, you're going to use however, nevertheless, in contrast. Conversely, cause and effect relation is therefore, thus, consequently. Again, result, to show the result. And for instance, specific etc is used for showing examples and emphasize to emphasize certain ideas. So you could use indeed, in fact, certainly, etc. So this concludes our lecture 5.